Yo. So, um, two things. To try and keep myself from hitting the video limit again, I'm actually going to talk about Pondy in like four different videos because there's just a lot to talk about. And I was like, why cut content? Why not just cover everything? So this is going to be one where I talk about kind of getting to and from, and then around the city, and then where we stayed, which is kind of short and eventful. The where we stayed part. Also, I moved a little bit because I used to just film like the curtains. I was like, oh well, there's also like a city behind me. Ooh. And so maybe a little more interesting of a view. Hey, nice. Okay. My mom asked me why I wasn't looking directly into the camera, which is weird for me because like the camera is on the side of my phone, and like the top part of my phone because I'm using I can look at myself like the forward facing camera. I'm not using the back facing camera. So I have the option of looking at myself like I'm talking into a mirror, or looking directly into the camera and having stuff kind of happen in my periph, which is actually kind of distracting because I was like, oh, that guy's doing something. Uh, but I bring that up because if I look off to the side, it's actually because now I'm reading notes. I made some notes to try to keep myself on topic. Um, so we got back from Pondy today. We left Friday right after work. Yeah, like right as soon as like we're like, oh, we're done with work. Let's get out of here. And it was a big training day for everybody at the branch. So like Justin and Jeff and I were kind of actually a little bored. Not, I mean, we had stuff to do, but we were still like, no one's interrupting my work, and I finished it all today. This is weird. So we left Friday, and then we stayed Friday night. We went exploring Saturday, which I'll talk about in a different video. Um, and then we stayed Saturday night, and then we did a little bit exploring Sunday, and then we came back Sunday. We left it, checked out at noon, and drove back. Um, so on the way, actually, one of the really nice things is that Jeff, our manager, the branch manager, Jeff. So it was who was going was Justin, my coworker, me, me, Jeff, the American expat who's living here for 2 years and is the branch manager, and then his fiancee Kara. I'm like 99% sure it's Kara. I'm not friends with them on Facebook. They won't call me out on it. And then I guess technically he went with us, but he doesn't hang out with us as Jeff's driver, and I forgot his name. It starts with an M. Mul, Mul something. Anyway, and that's actually really nice to have a driver because he's used to driving here, which is totally different than the way we drive at home. Um, it it's hard to appreciate the difference because it's just like a mass. Like if you imagine like a crowd walking from one location to another location, but people join and leave at different times. Like it's just like that's traffic. Traffic acts exactly the same way like traffic in a mall would act, but everybody's in cars and on bikes and in tuk-tuks. So and buses, massive buses everywhere. So it's really weird. So it's nice to have the driver because he knows what he's doing, and also because I don't want to have to go through the hassle. Nobody wants to go through the hassle of driving here. So it's really nice that he was there. On the way down to Pondy, we took the bypass, which is like the fast direct route, because we left at 5. And one of the weird things here, I mean it's normal here, but we're close enough to like the equator that like it's 6 to 6 essentially is sunrise to sunset. It's 6 to 6. So like this, it feels like the sun sets so early because we were just getting into daylight savings or out of daylight savings time, and we're starting to get like more and more sun back in Seattle. And I came here and we actually have less sun. And I was like, oh, it sets really early. But since it was dark early, we took the bypass, which was just like the most direct, kind of boring route. There would been nothing to look at, but it was dark, so we didn't look at anything anyway. And it was a weird experience. That was the first time driving on the highway here. Everything else has been kind of in the roads, just because we landed at the airport and it wasn't that long of a drive to the hotel, and then we haven't gone anywhere. And it's kind of it was like 3 lanes on either side, so it's like a 6-lane highway with a pretty big divider, which is smart because otherwise people just drive in oncoming traffic when it's convenient. And they do the right left switch, so you actually pass on the right. Yeah, you pass on the right normally. Well, you would if anyone followed the rules here. But the bypass was actually pretty uneventful. I just kind of listened to music on the way down. We talked a little bit, and then the car just went silent after a while. I actually got a little cold in the back because it was like air conditioned. I guess everybody else was fine, but I get cold easily. So I was a little cold in the back, but actually like just listened to music on the way down. There wasn't much to see. We passed a lot of like tolls. There was like straight like 4 tolls. And it's like a 3-hour drive, like right at 3 hours. So the bypass is supposed to be faster, and it was trafficy. So we drove down. It was 3 hours. There was like 4 tolls, and like I guess two-wheelers don't have to pay the tolls, or they should, but they just don't. But we go up to the tolls, and it's just chaotic because like there's like 4 places you can pay the toll, and then there's like traffic just kind of like I'm in this line, you know, which is kind of how traffic works in general here. And actually, kind of funny story. On the way back, we only paid like 1 toll because we took a different route. I'll talk about it. We paid 1 toll, and we didn't have exact change. Like Jeff only had like 500 rupees, and I don't know what was happening, but our driver and the toll booth guy were just exchanging words, and the toll booth guy was very unhappy because they always want exact change here. They'll open up like a new line at the grocery store, and their till will have like 10 tens in it. So if you show up with like 1,000, which is what the ATM gives me, if you show up with like 1,000, they're just like, I can't do this. This transaction is not possible. You can't buy groceries because I can't let you buy groceries. And so they had that exchange. It was kind of funny. But we were paying tolls on the way out, and it wasn't that bad. We actually had to stop at one point in time because it's still part of the weird like territory state system. The Pondicherry isn't technically part of Tamil. So we had to actually stop and get like a temporary registration, and it was really funny because we had stopped and the driver was like, "I'll take care of this," and he left, and he went to go get the registration. And it took him like a while. It felt like forever because we're just sitting there in the dark, just kind of like kicking it, just like. Does it always take this long? And at some point in time, like there was a guy in front of us who just had like a food cart, but it was like he was done, so he was just kind of chilling. And people would walk by our car, like they would stop behind us on the road because we were in like a turnout. We weren't just like parked in the middle of the road. And people would like walk by our car, and again with the staring, they would just be like. On the way by, and just like totally like they're just looking in the car, not subtle at all about it, and it was really creepy, but not in a menacing way. Just in like it almost felt like if you didn't have the culture experience, if you just experienced that and then went back home, it would almost seem like he was trying to be menacing and missing, and by he I mean like 8 people who walked past us to go up to the cart that had closed to get some water. But then we arrived pretty late. We actually had dinner because they eat dinner late here, so we got there at like 8:30, checked in, dropped our stuff off, and then came down. The rooms are much smaller there, but I also didn't really care. I'll get into the hotel in a minute. We ate dinner at like their restaurant, and then just like went to bed because it was like it's late and we're gonna get up early in the morning. But traffic is really weird because there's like three lanes, but nobody stays in them. Even when if you're the only person in your width of the road, people weren't still staying in the lane. They would just be driving directly over the top of a line, and I don't know why. It works in a way. Like everybody got there safe. And we got back safe, so it was not a big deal, but it just kind of, it's bizarre that they're not even driving in the fast lane. They're just driving in the driving lane, but in such a way that you can't pass them in the fast lane without, like, getting them to move. And I bring that up because, like, the horns are so used here. They're not afraid to use their horn. Back home, I would actually, like, I'd get sad when I missed an opportunity to use my horn. Like, it was like I'm the second car in line at a green light or at a stoplight, and the light turns green and the car in front of me doesn't go. And it's like that like, you know, at 7 seconds horn is too early, but at 8 seconds you can do it. But I feel self-conscious, so I wait till 10, and then they go anyway at like 10. I was like, oh, I could have honked at 8, and I didn't. They don't wait here. Honking is like a language. They honk when they approach an intersection every time. They honk when they're behind you. They honk if they haven't honked in a while, just to be like, hey, I'm still here. It's almost like, imagine if every driver just blacked out all their windows and then was essentially relying on some sort of communal echolocation to navigate the road. That's what happens. And I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear horns right now. And I'm like on the 4th floor and there's no road behind me. Yeah, there's just horns, and that's just what happens. If I close the curtains, I can't hear it. Or if I have anything going on, I can't hear it. Yeah. But our driver, so he's apparently, like, he's contracted out, and he works for Jeff all the time. That's the only thing he does. That's his job, is to drive Jeff around, and his wife, or fiance. Because labor is very inexpensive here. So he uses them, I think, 5 days a week. And then if Jeff needs somebody on the other days, he gets a fill-in. But he really likes his driver because apparently he had a lot of experience driving expats, or like the service he was through. And he actually Jeff met the driver through the MAA branch, like the Expeditors branch, because that was their go-to driver whenever they had like a European visiting or a CHQ person visiting, whoever. They'll grab that driver. So he had been trained that, like, hey, Europeans and Americans, they don't care for the horn, because and Kara with Jeff were telling us that, like, driving around with like other drivers, it was just constant honking, to the point where you'd have to have like ibuprofen with you, like Advil with you, and be listening to music the whole time. And even then, it was just distracting. It was grating because you just weren't used to it. And there would be times where they would just honk in a 10-minute drive 800 times, and it was grating. And this guy doesn't honk at all, which is amazing because everybody honks. So when we were driving at night, instead of honking to pass, he was like using his lights, and it was super subtle and cool. And I actually napped a bit. Like, I was just listening to music, and like I was in the back, and I was just like laying on luggage and just like relaxing. Let's see. So on the way back, we took a different route because we checked out at noon and drove all the way back. So we took, like, I guess the West Coast equivalent of like the 101. So driving up like the East Coast of India. And it was like 3 hours still, because there was like a lot less traffic on like Saturday at noon than it was Friday at like 5. So driving back was actually way more interesting. It was during the day, and I tried to take a couple like hyperlapse videos, and it didn't pan out, because I think hyperlapse is meant for you to be standing still and everything else be moving. But I might share them anyway if I can figure out how to get the video out of the app. But it was really interesting because there was a lot of farms, a lot of ranches, a lot of like plantations, and all three of those are essentially the same thing. And salt flats, which I still gotta Google because I felt stupid when they're like, oh, there's salt flats. There's like a lot of water and a lot of salt, and I thought salt was mined. So I don't know if salt flats is where you get salt, or if salt flats are where you use salt for something. And I don't know, like, what I thought salting the earth was bad for farming. I gotta look that up because I don't know how salt flats work. But I saw them, just huge piles of salt, just pure white salt in massive quantities, dump truck sized like stacks of salt. It was kind of weird, but it was cool to watch. A lot of like little towns. It's just like driving up. If you've ever driven up like 97 in Oregon, kind of the same thing, but actually more just like houses along like the road. Traffic was pretty light. It was a 2-lane road rather than having like 3 lanes on each side and then a divider. It was just a 2-lane road. So when we passed people, which we did like every 30 seconds, you were driving into oncoming traffic, and there were still buses, 2-wheelers, other sedans, trucks, dump trucks full of what I assume is water because there's some kind of tank on the back. No actual tanks yet. We did pass. Oh, and there's a lot of like reroutes where like, oh, we're working on the road, but before we work on that road, we're just going to build a temporary road over here. So we'd be doing like 40 or something, and you'd have to come to a stop because like there's no smooth transition between the road and then the bypass road. And if you hit that at speed, you'd lose tires. Like, it was like a very rough transition. It wasn't so bad at like 0 miles an hour, but at 40, it would have been crazy and like painful. So it was very rough. It seems like they paved it, but it wasn't like actually the paving wasn't that bad. It wasn't like there was a lot of potholes or anything, but like the lines on the road just happened to follow the asphalt, and the line on the left side of the road between us and just wilderness or just off of the edge into water at points in time. The lane would just be waving because that's the way the asphalt was laid. So it's very loosey goosey, just kind of like, hey, here's a road, you know what you're doing. And a lot of passing, a lot of horn usage by everybody but our driver, which was really nice. We did pass one accident, which is the first accident I've actually seen here. It looked like a rear end, like the car that did the rear ending had like a messed up front a little bit, and the car that got rear-ended was like fine. It was like an SUV. It was kind of funny because like we had to come to a stop because it was like there was enough. The accident wasn't that big. Like both cars just pulled over the side of the road and weren't occupying that much space. But excuse me. But there had been like 100 people, like just onlookers, and it's actually really funny because we drove past. People were kind of like gesturing to the glass in the road. They didn't know what was happening at first. It was just like a mass of people on the left side of the road. On the left, like third to half of the road was just people. And it wasn't until we got past like the first group of people that we actually saw the two cars. And it was kind of funny because like people were gesturing, but they gestured like different. Like I guess like if I was trying to tell you that there was glass in the road, I would just kind of like gesture to the glass. But they're gesturing different here. So there's like two guys as we passed were gesturing to a bike who I guess was like, get out of the road. And they're like, yeah, but there's glass. And that's how they gestured to the glass. It was like an upturned hand and then like a full extension of the arm. It was like, but look at all this in the road. And it was like, I was like watching, I was like, oh, that's a weird what you're doing, but it's a weird that the way you're doing that. But I appreciate the effort you're putting into like trying to make sure that we don't just drive over glass. It's well enough. Although I don't know if like tempered glass really messes with tires. Is it that much worse than like just gravel? I don't think so. But I don't know. I mean, why risk it? So we stayed at the Accord, and it was kind of funny because like this past week, I had just let a couple like dumb things. I guess I talked about that, but I let a couple dumb things get to me, and I was like, oh, these little annoyances at the Green Park, grr. And we went to stay at the Accord, and both me and Justin felt the same way. We're like, we are looking forward to getting back to the Green Park, because the Accord was just, it was just not as nice. It just wasn't, in general, like across the board, the rooms weren't quite as nice. The Wi-Fi wasn't at all at points in time, which is frustrating because you feel isolated enough here, and then when you lose like connection to the internet. I just watched, like, we got there the first night and the internet didn't work and I just didn't have the energy to fight. I called them, I did have a little bit of energy to fight. We called them and we're like, hey, the Wi-Fi doesn't work up here. Like, it doesn't reach, like, in the lobby you'd have 4 bars and then by the time you got to the 3rd floor, you just didn't have Wi-Fi anymore. So they brought a router into Justin's room and it just didn't work. And then he gave up on it, and he went to bed. And I was like, I'll take it into my room. And then it continued to not work. And I called them, and I was like, it just doesn't. This is not a solution. Like you introduced a new concept to the problem that just didn't solve it. You know. And they sent the guy up who brought the router, and he clearly wasn't like an IT guy, and he had that router was his solution. Like that's what he had. And I was like, this doesn't work. And I showed him on my phone. I was like, it's not broadcasting, or it'll broadcast and it'll turn back off. And even when it is broadcasting, it's not giving me any internet. And he just went, the IT guy will be here in the morning. And then they did get kind of a solution the next day, but not really. But anyway, it was really frustrating because like not having internet is so isolating. And I still had a couple things I wanted to look up, and I just didn't have that opportunity, or I had to go and I was just have to sit in the lobby, which was aggressively air conditioned. Like, my room was fine because you can change your own room temperature, but in the lobby, it was just super cold. Like, it had to have been, like, 65 in there. It was just too cold to just hang out. But it was fine, because essentially what I chalked it up to was, like, the hotel was just a place to stay when I wasn't exploring. And I had a great time in Pondicherry. I'm really glad to go. I had, like, a list of things. I was like, I want to see, like, history. I want to learn about, like, culture. And I want to try, like, foods I haven't tried before. And I want to just like walk around and explore, and then I want to do a little gift shopping. Got them all, nailed it. And I'll talk about like all those later. And going around town was really kind of interesting because like we stayed about 15 minutes from like the French Quarter, and as you go to the French Quarter, you go through like this very Tamil, like this very Indian, this very Tamil area. It's very like busy, and there's all horns. It feels like just like Chennai, and then you get into the French Quarter, and it's so quiet. Like there's horns there's like a sign saying no horn, and not everybody pays attention to that. But there's just a lot less traffic. The roads are smaller, and there's a lot more like bicycle traffic. And actually, the promenade that runs along. Oh hey, we just lost power. I think with the laptop is gonna give me enough light. Let me maximize this. Get a little bit more light. Yeah. So we just lost power. It's funny. But the road that runs along the ocean, it's back. How about that? Like the promenade, they actually close at like six to eight or something. They close to traffic, so you can just walk. People just walk for their evening walks and ride bikes and stuff, and it's really nice. So walking around the French Quarter and like White Town is what it's called, which I don't know if it's a reference to the people or not. It's actually kind of nice, and it was really fun to just navigate around there. And we had like a tour guide for a little bit, which I'll talk about when I talk about the exploring. And I actually I had made like a Google map where I had started a location I wanted to visit, and it was really easy to get around because I didn't have my Indian SIM card, so I had GPS and I could Google places and get directions and stuff. So navigating, the driver drove us into White Town, and then we just walked around White Town because it was like maybe 2 miles from the farthest north point to the farthest south point that I wanted to visit at least. So getting around in White Town or getting around in the French Quarter was like super easy and really friendly, and we saw a lot of really cool stuff. But yeah, so that I guess I don't want to get into everything because I'm already at like 20 minutes. But so getting there and getting back was kind of an adventure in itself, an experience. And we drove to this excursion, but the next 2 excursions will probably be flights. We haven't decided exactly what we want to do. We're looking at like hill stations. So hill stations is their like alpine retreat. They're like northern areas. So if you went like up to Mount Rainier and went to like lodging up there, that's kind of like their equivalent of a hill station. And we're getting into summer, and so that'll be a really good like escape from the heat. So we're probably gonna do a hill station for the middle one, maybe the last one, because it's just gonna get hotter while we're here. But we'll see about that. Yeah, I think that's everything I'll talk about right now. I'm hoping to do one a day and get them up, just so it's still fresh in my mind. And I have a lot of pictures to upload. I took like a ton of pictures, especially like on the tour and stuff like that. And then while we were around, we visited a lot of really cool sites. I didn't get pictures of everything, like the churches, like the Catholic and the Christian churches were fine with you taking pictures, but all of the like ashrams and the temples, like the Hindu temples that we visited, were very clearly marked, like no cell phones, no pictures, no being loud. And I'm like, all right, I can respect that, which is a really bummer because they were amazingly colorful, and I really wish I could have taken a lot of pictures because they were really cool. And you guys have been in churches. I mean, the churches we saw were really cool, and they have a lot of uniqueness that I want to share. But I'm bummed I didn't get to take a picture of the temples and the ashrams as well. But I'll get into that in the exploration more. This is why I was like, I had notes, and I've actually gotten to the end of the notes, and I need to stop talking. But I have power, so I'm going to try uploading this. Thanks for listening. And watching, I guess. Or, if it was minimized.